You are now listening to the Scheist Podcast, when millions of opinions just aren't enough.
Hello, and welcome to a very special presentation of the Scheist Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Scheist, with my co-host, Vanya Garraway from Review Cinema in Toronto. We'll be taking a deep dive into the career of the legendary Roy Scheider. So join us as we go into the Scheider-Verse.
It's showtime, folks.
I understand you used to be in banking.
If it's still 120 pounds overweight, Jimmy's got to be right.
Hold your nose, we're in deep shit.
Something about your face makes me want to slap the shit out of it.
All right, Six. He shot a cop. I'm on the job. He's going for the bridge. Close it off.
People ask me questions, and I give you answers, and then I ask you questions, and you give me answers, and that's the way we find out things.
You're not Swiss, what are you?
I don't go after a girl. Girl comes to me.
You better help this friend of yours get off the yellow stuff.
Never mind why, just get out.
I have no respect for pacifism. It's a morally bankrupt belief.
Come on down and chum some of this shit.
It's not like we have a solid outline to follow. It's not like we have years of experience doing this to fall back on either. So we're here again together. We're into the Scheider-Verse.
We're in it. Like, I was in it. I actually watched French Connection this morning, so I'm like really in it, you know?
Nice. I watched it last night. So I think we're like descending, I guess. We're on the way in. We've already entered, and now we're just sort of like going down. And
well, we've never left.
Never.
Like we did. No. Yeah.
In my heart, I've always been there.
Yeah. we never really leave the Scheider-Verse. I don't know who else is in here, but we're definitely in here all the time.
Yeah, always. And like oddly, this is a movie that comes out the same year as Klute. It's a 1971 film. Mm. His small supporting role in Klute gets turned into like a proper supporting role, borderline lead in this. I mean, I think it's arguable that him and Hackman are sort of on the same level in this film.
I think some people could look at it as co-leads.
Yeah.
You know, they're, you know, I talk about him being like integral to Klute, and I think he is, but this is on another level, right? For him. And actually he was cast before Gene.
He was, yeah. The casting, because William Friedkin did not want Gene Hackman from what I read.
He had like
but
3 people before him.
Yeah, he wanted Paul Newman. He wanted people that were too pricey at first.
But then he wanted like real serious kind of conversational and like testing. Were Jackie Gleason, which he talked about, because so like when people talk about Gleason, they you know, it's comedic, it's honeymooners, but you know, he was in The Hustler and he was like talking about him. He was like, that's the kind of Gleason I was trying to cast, like this Black Irish kind of like big guy. Then it was Peter Boyle. But Peter Boyle didn't want to do Mean Guys anymore. He did this character in a movie called Joe, where he was a racist with a bat. And then he wanted Jimmy Breslin, who actually did come and test with Gene. And the guy that plays the young black man that they Alan Weeks that they chased down in the beginning of the film. So they tested with Jimmy Breslin, and he was really great. And then I think William Friedkin says he forgot everything that he did on Monday, he forgot on Tuesday or something like that. Like they tried it again, and I'm paraphrasing. I don't know if it's exactly like that, but he, like everything that worked, you know, in that scene, then just didn't work again when they tried it again. So he ended up with Gene. but he always knew Roy was his guy from the beginning. Like he doesn't really audition. He just talks to people, he said. And he said that when Roy Scheider walked into his office, I was watching this interview with him at the Academy, Motion Picture Academy was doing a talk with Friedkin about French Connection, and he said when he walked into his office and everybody in the crowd's like cheers as soon as they talk about, as soon as he says Roy's name, everybody in the crowd goes, yeah, and he's just like, yeah, because he's just like, he was a fantastic actor. Like he was a great actor. He's like, oh, what a great actor. And he's like, we lost him too soon, kind of thing. But he said that he asked him what he was doing, and he said he was off Broadway playing a cigar smoking nun. And and he said, he's just like, oh, you got the job. And he's just like, what? He's just like, yeah, you're the guy. And he's just like, don't you want me to read for you? But he just didn't need him to. He already knew. And then he never looked back on Roy.
Yeah, there was in the DVD commentary track where Scheider is the one doing the commentary. He talks about getting this role and auditioning for it and not knowing at the time that he was auditioning for it, because he was basically auditioning on stage somewhere. And he's like, they just had the one show light on, so you couldn't like see anybody in the audience, and all you heard was this like disembodied British voice. And so he read the sides, and the guy was very insistent, like that the role had to be played by somebody who was 6 feet. So they asked him like, how tall is he? So he says like, I'm 5'10" and a half, but you give me lifts or boots or something, like I can be 6 feet. So the voice tells him like, you did wonderful. Sends him off to somebody else off the stage to be like, all right, get him these lines and we're going to have him come back and read these. Does it again. Roy, you're wonderful. How tall are you? Roy tells him the same thing. I'm 5'10" and a half. Give me the shoes, lifts, whatever. We can make it work. And the director, or the casting director, I guess, tells him again, like, okay, you're really good. Let's go have you meet this other person. We're going to give you some more sides. Come back. Does it again, goes through the same thing again. And then he asks him like, okay, stand next to our stage manager. And Roy was just like, I'm done with this. And he threw the script into the audience and like basically stormed out thinking, hey, like this is bullshit. And it turns out that this person was working with Friedkin to cast French Connection. And so he had no idea that like sort of this entire process was leading him towards this role. And so for a guy who is an accomplished and well experienced stage actor at that point, to kind of be like fed up with the process and just like display that kind of attitude. But I think it was that attitude that ended up getting him the role, because whoever that British guy was tells Friedkin, hey, I think I got your guy, but I don't know if you're going to be able to work with him. But he knew, like, I'm going to send him your way.
I love that. And I like the height. His height is also so like ambiguous. Like he's just, we've talked about it before. I've talked about it a lot. He's like the everyman, like he always, and he talks about how he could play very different. He can play different ethnicities. He can play different kinds of men, but he can be the leading man also. It's just the height 5'10" is so like, okay, it's not tall, it's not short. You know what I mean? It's just
as a 5'10" man myself, I know this well.
Everything about him is like very chameleon. Like he can just, adjust all the time. And so it is interesting that he actually got even that frustrated, but I guess, you have your limits, and he's just like, it's just kind of insulting, just keep doing this kind of thing. But it works for Buddy or
Cloudy.
Cloudy, or
Cloudy's a great nickname. It's probably doesn't probably refer to something that's actually good, but Cloudy is a cool nickname. I'll give it that. And I think, with Roy too, like he's slender. So he sort of looks taller than maybe he would if he were heavy set. And I know you and I talk about fashion a lot, and we'll probably get into it a little bit more in this movie as we do. But like something very small that I was paying attention to was the way that his pants were tailored versus Popeye. And it's like, oh, he went with like, there's no break. They're hemmed. They're tapered a little bit. He's got nice shoes on. So it's like he's aware of his presence that is put forward by his clothing choices, or at least the costumer knows that it's like, this is the kind of guy that we want to put in these types of clothes. And so there's a lot of like close-ups of them running where it's like just their feet and stuff, and like they're scampering around the sidewalks. And so you can totally tell the difference between the two of them based on like the shoe that they choose, the kind of pants, the color of the pants, the cut of the pants. And there's so many times, like I did an episode with Newman for his show when we were talking about Desperate Measures with Michael Keaton and Andy Garcia. And it was like the 90s suit that they had Andy Garcia in is like overflowing. And like we joke that like there comes a day in every young man's life where you have to wear your dad's suit. And for Andy Garcia, it was for this movie. And so to see a movie in the 70s that is like so attuned to just like the subtlety of what tailoring does to your outfit is so important. And it's not something that's like overly emphasized throughout the film. There are some things where it's the coat that the Frenchman gets from his girlfriend, I think, in the beginning of the film. Very, very nice coat. But he says something to her along the lines of, you know, if it weren't for you, I'd still look like a longshoreman. So like her attentiveness to like how style translates in terms of like what you do and how you present outwardly, I think is just like a little nod to people paying attention to those things throughout the course of the film.
Well, I think that you hit on a lot of good things there. I will say, I like the 90s thing, because I always like to say that we were in the great fabric excess of the 90s.
Everything was too big.
You know, like, and then all of a sudden, remember, skinny jeans comes out, like follows that. It's like we all had to shrink down. We used it all up. We all used all the fabric up in the 90s. But yeah, as far as he has the best fashion actually in the movie, and it's the kind of costuming that I love to see in movies, is like that really not period, like the stuff that always gets the acclaim or big opulent period stuff, but it's more like this is like practical clothing that people wear every day, ready to wear clothing. And I would say one of the reasons I think we always come back to fashion and clothing and costuming is because it's like one of the things that you can kind of carry away from a movie and kind of shape your identity with, you know, that is not given a lot of credit to. It's just like when people see each other, you know, on the street, it's just like, oh, that person might be into this, you know, they might be into Beverly Hills Cop because they dress like in like a hoodie, like like Axel does, and you know, you might be into, you know, Diane Keaton because of the way she is and it's iconic or whatever. Like, but so I always think of it as this one kind of item that you can really like shape your identity with from cinema is costuming,
point,
you know.
Yeah. It's very tactile in that way.
Exactly. And it's very real, you know. It's something that we, you know, do every day. It's like change our clothes and stuff. But in this, I like the idea that they're of a certain era, they're of a certain age, that they, you know, the 70s, there's a certain kind of look in the 70s that's not like them, because they're probably pulling clothes and they probably have pants that they wore in the 60s. You know, he's probably wearing items, even like he has a motorcycle jacket he might have worn in the 60s, he might have had since he was in the 60s. So that tapered kind of shorter length emulates that time rather than the decade that they're in, which is bell bottoms and like that sort of thing that people usually think of when they think of the 70s, but which is not what most people dressed like, because that's not how clothes works. People carry the clothes that they wore in a previous decade to the next decade, And sometimes when we look at movies that are trying to be in a specific time, or just like it's kind of lazy costuming, it's everything's new. They just buy everything new for that character rather than think about where they are, where they came from, how old they are. These guys could have been in the military, you know what I mean? They're not going to look like hippies, they're going to look maybe more buttoned down as cops.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And these are also not characters that are in their early 20s. They're not people that are trying to necessarily like find themselves in the same way. These are people that are like well-worn characters who have been cops for a while.
Yeah.
So this is how they present in New York.
Yeah. And okay, so it's winter, a specific time, but I would say, like, for Roy's character, he is, even though I said that, he is fashionable, because one of the things that was more popular in the 70s was the turtleneck, the roll neck, for British friends. And he wears like a lot of that in that look in the movie, and it's winter, which is a kind of perfect, but it does seem like he cares about what he looks like, that he wants to look cool and he wants to have a certain kind of polish to him, rather than Popeye, who's like more disheveled.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see, like, the further we go down this road, like what Roy's costumes look like throughout it. Because I mean, like, even in Jaws, like the cutoff, sweater that he's wearing on the beach is like a very specific look. And so I'm curious if I'll stumble across an interview where he talks about like working with the costume designer to like find stuff that fits his character, because even in Klute, he looked like he's wearing like white pants and a like wide open like Hawaiian shirt for some of it. He's wearing like a very light colored linen suit later in the film. So he hasn't looked bad on screen. Like, I've never seen him look sloppy. So yeah, I'm interested.
I'm wondering too. He feels like, I mean, he's an athlete, right? But he feels like he is a person who's like really attuned with his body and what it looks like and how it, would feel and that sort of thing. So maybe he has an understanding of how he looks in clothes too. So when he's working with somebody, a costume designer, he could be like, I need a shorter length top, or I need a, you know what I mean? Like, or a longer here or short, here. And this, what he might know what makes him look tall, what makes him look, makes him look a little bit more muscular, that sort of thing. So I'm sure people learn, especially if you're a stage actor too, where you apply your own makeup a lot often, especially as he's working like off Broadway and stuff. You might do a lot of things on your own. You might even bring your own clothes to be in a costume as a costume too.
That's a good point. Yeah. And I will say, like, as a California boy, one of the things I envy most about people on the East Coast is the wardrobes. Because it gets so cold, you have this entire like set of clothes meant to sort of be comfortable and fashionable for that cold. Here, it's like, okay, even when it's cold, it's not really that cold. A lot of people I know from colder environments come here and they're in like shorts and sandals when I'm wearing pants and a hoodie. So
it's a season. It's having seasons. Yeah, which we're starting to lose, by the way. But it's climate change is real, guys. But but yeah, it is a comfort. Those are my favorite seasons, fall and spring, where I can wear multiple things. I can wear a jacket, a sweater. I can wear tights and a hat and all these little things that maybe you can't wear in a hotter climate. So, and Roy's from New Jersey.
Yeah,
like lived a long time in New York too. So, yeah.
Well, before we move on, I should probably get into like the official particulars. So, yes, we are talking about The French Connection, amongst other things. Directed by the late great William Friedkin, written by Ernest Tidyman, Robin Moore, and William Friedkin as well. Starring Gene Hackman, of course, Roy Scheider, Fernando Rey. Music by Don Ellis and cinematography by Owen Roisman. This was nominated for, drumroll, 8 Academy Awards. And it won 5 of them, including Best Picture, Best Lead Actor, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Editing, and picked up nominations for Best Supporting Actor for Roy, Best Cinematography for Roisman, and then Best Sound from the sound team. I don't know who else was nominated in there.
All deserved, in my opinion.
Yeah, and probably the most well-regarded film I've ever spoken about in a recorded podcast setting. It has a 94 Metascore, which is like staggering. I've never seen a number that high before. I'm lucky if we can get it over 50 most of the time when I'm hosting a podcast episode about a movie. But we are fortunate that we will talk about a lot better ones throughout the course of our discussion on Roy Scheider's career. And it was great to see that, you know, he's nominated for supporting here, because I think it could have really gone either way with the two of them. I think specifically because of the character design, in that what you get with Cloudy is a guy who is a lot more professional than Popeye. But Popeye seems to be the guy with like the cop instincts, right? He's got the best police instincts I've ever seen kind of guy. And so that kind of just gritty, I've got a hunch cop it's an archetype of a character, but to have him with a partner who, you know, shows up at his place, has a key to his apartment, lets himself in, and it's like, it's a disgusting mess in here, but he is very nicely dressed. He is not hungover. He is also not handcuffed to the bed by some random woman he met the night before.
Yeah. By the foot.
By the foot. And she's still there too. It's not like she robbed him and left. She's just like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna handcuff you here. And
it's one of my favorite parts is Roy saying hi there to her, like down the hall, that little hi there. It's really cute.
It's not his first time he's had to use his key to go into Popeyes and found him with a strange woman.
Yeah, I like that he has a key, and I like that he's familiar, and I like that he's checking in on him. You know, I think he knows he has to, not just to work, but he kind of is like, "Are you alive?" kind of thing, like a wellness check rather than, you know, just to work.
Yeah, and so I understand the, not the necessity, but the desire to want to put the sort of more colorful, rougher edged character as the lead here, but Roy is not getting overpowered in this movie at all, I don't think. And it's such a big, broad step from Klute to this, and it's such a different type of character as well. I was really, of course, like, we're into the Scheider-Verse, so I'm very much paying attention to him and his choices and his performance and all of the little things that go into the relationship with Hackman. And, you know, they spent a lot of time with the actual police officers who the book was written about and then adapted into the film, and that's how they kind of learned who they were. And he asked his counterpart a question sort of along the lines of, like, how do you deal with Eddie? Like, Eddie's such an asshole. Yeah. And the answer was, well, if I didn't like him, who would? And Roy's like, that was it. That was the thing that, like, gave me all the insight I needed into who these people are and what their relationship is. He's like, I don't necessarily like this person at all, but he is my partner, and because I honor and value the sort of nature of being partners and what that means, I'm going to treat it with a certain level of respect, even though the guy himself is maybe not worthy of it.
Yeah, I watched that interview too with Roy when he talked about that, and he plays it like that. He you know, he said that's when he knew he had the role, like he knew exactly what to do with the role. And it shows, because it's like he's just like, oh yeah, I have to show up for this guy, you know, because no one else will. No one's going to care about this guy. But also, he's like Watson to Sherlock Holmes. The thing about Watson and Sherlock Holmes is that we only know about Sherlock Holmes and his existence because of Watson, you know, really.
Yeah.
people know because he solves crimes, but we really know about him the way we know about him as an audience because of Watson. And it's an obsession. He is just as obsessed as Holmes. You know what I mean? Because he's obsessed with Holmes and his skill. And he is so smart himself. He brings a lot to the table, but it's his also obsession that kind of keeps that person that can be disheveled, that can be a total mess. Because Popeye is like a Sherlock Holmes kind of in that way. That could be a total mess, kind of keeps them going, keeps them on track, so they don't like end up in a ditch, and they keep, they continue to be dogged. And so I actually think Roy Scheider would have made an excellent Watson, actually. And he would have, but he was also capable of being a Sherlock Holmes. That's what kind of makes him great. But I that's when I look at French Connection, I definitely see the, that comparison, this well put together guy who can see the genius of someone and help them apply that more, specifically and more consciously, rather than totally completely flying off the rails, which he comes to and does many times. But if somebody like Russo isn't around him, Cloudy's not there, it could be so much worse, But Cloudy has to have a level of obsession too that keeps this all going. And so they're kind of a perfect pair.
Yeah, they're a good fit, and that's why they are sort of isolated from the rest of the NYPD, or it's got to be NYPD, right?
Yeah, they're in Brooklyn mostly.
Yeah, they have like a very prickly relationship with the feds that they sort of don't want. Like, they want the help, but they don't want the oversight. They don't want like toes getting stepped on, kind of thing. And I feel like they both play it really well. And as I listen to some of the commentary with Roy on the DVD, he's talking specifically about these lunches that Gene Hackman would go on with William Friedkin. And I think he maybe mentioned one of the writers, but it was like he felt like he was being left out of these lunches. And a lot of what it was were these discussions between Hackman and Friedkin about Hackman's struggles with trying to understand and maybe provide like false motivations to Popeye, because he was grappling with, or he was struggling, I should say, to like let himself be a kind of monstrous character, and he didn't he couldn't believe that aspect of it. And Friedkin just told him like, no, he's a monster, that's how you need to play this role, like he's a scumbag, and he just like happens to be a cop. But you and I and some other people talked about the specifics of like him using the N-word in this movie, and we were doing a film club discussion on something else, but it came up about censorship and erasure. And the reason I dug this out of my DVD collection that's in storage and made sure I had it is because I didn't want to see the version that was censored there, because I wanted to know why this choice was in the movie. Excuse me. And we see why, because Cloudy is not that person, but Popeye is. And like he's such a shitbag that we see it over and over again. And so it made me think of like the broader racial themes that are present in the movie. And we see sort of black men obviously being villainized on screen as drug dealers, whatever. They're getting their establishments raided. And then in like a scene right after that, they go to another club, and there's a group of like 3 black women like doing lounge singing, and it's like applause, and it's so great. And like they're as characters willing to see that side of like the entertainment and be like, this is acceptable within the range of like how we expect our relationships with the black community to go. And then on the other hand, like they're hassling people over like low level drugs a lot of the time, just in the name of finding this, but really like he gets off on it. And so I'm just curious, like from your perspective, in the way that the framing of the racial context of this film is, and knowing that Friedkin definitely wanted Gene Hackman to play the character like as a racist and not look for the motivation to excuse it, which I found interesting. It's like, he's not a racist because of, this thing. It's like he's a racist because he's a racist.
So it's interesting because when people started talking about censoring French Connection, I was pissed because it takes away like what the certain things that are. Friedkin talks about this movie being a relationship mainly between these two men. Mm-hmm. He says, the French Connection is there. That, that part of the story is there. Their case is obviously important, but really it's about this relationship. And that's why it makes sense that we talk about them as co-leads too. Just considering how Friedkin thinks about the material. But when I heard that, I was just like, then you can't have those conversations between the two of them. If you censor Popeye's how Popeye behaves, then it loses the complexity of how Cloudy like handles things. When he talks about the cut in his injury, and he says, how's I supposed to know he had a knife, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And he says, never trust an N-word, and he says it could have been a white person. Mm-hmm. Could have been a white guy. And he says, never trust anybody. So like these kinds of conversations, like I don't even know, Popeye's racist for sure, but he doesn't really care about anybody.
Yeah, you know what I mean? He's like a total asshole.
It's not, I don't even think he thinks about it as racist. He doesn't have to. He's not the one who defines that, but I really don't think he cares about anybody. Like when he's talking to those children as Santa, even though he's like working, I really do think he is like thinks those kids are cute or whatever. And when he's using this a slur for the Spanish community too, and then when he's in, being shot at and he sees those Spanish kids in the window and he's like speaks to them in Spanish to tell them to get away from the window. And I don't think he even thinks about it. I think he thinks he lives in a world where this is not an excuse for him. He is racist and he is an awful person. But he lives in a world where he sees all the time that these things, this is where people are. These are their positions. He's compartmentalized everybody into their little corners. And so when he goes to when he's racist and villainizing and brutalizing Black men on the streets as a cop, he thinks that's his role, that's their role, you know what I mean? And then he goes to the club, he's like, oh, look at these beautiful Black women singing, I'm just gonna chill to that, because particularly white people have never had an issue with Black people entertaining them and then sometimes stealing that entertainment, or us in general. But it's never been the issue. It's just that's a place that is acceptable, that white people have deemed acceptable for Black people to be, So for him, that's not surprising at all. I mean, for Black people watching that would not be surprising at all to see him enjoying Black music on one side and then brutalizing Black people on another side. And also the other layer that it adds to it is that also Russo is not good either by virtue of watching it happen most of the time with him as a cop. As like I always say, not every cop is bad, but none of them are good. Like it's just like he's complacent, to what's happening too. So, but we're not watching a movie to watch good guys. We're watching a movie with these characters because they're compelling and they don't have to be good. to be compelling, and their story and their journey that they go on doesn't need to. And that's kind of what I love about Friedkin, you know. And I love these actors that are able to get there. Yeah, Gene, he didn't want to say the N word. He doesn't. It's against him morally as a person, but that's not him. And he's playing a role, and he's getting there. And if it's done intelligently, and if it's done not in this way to paint them in any regard, there's no point in this movie where where Friedkin is attempting to make you be sympathetic. It's not about that. If there was this kind of like painting of like trying to be like, I know he's bad, like Crash, then, you know, like we're trying to paint, you know, Crash, he does something like racist, but then tries to paint it like, oh, he's a good guy over here. That's not what's happening in the French Connection. And so it's not necessary to censor it because we know he's bad and we're supposed to think he's bad. You know, these other guys that he's chasing are also bad, you know?
Yes, very true. And I mean, even on the poster for the film, it says Doyle is bad news, but a good cop. So the identity of leading the story with people that you know are at best just sort of doing kind of the right thing in this one instance by wanting to stop the drug deal. Like, I think if I take myself back out of it far enough, like, are they even doing the right thing? Because they're not approaching it from the sense of there's a huge overdose problem that we're trying to fight or anything like that. It's like, we want the score because we're Narcotics Bureau cops, and our reputation is based on whether or not we're arresting people for drugs. And I think it was their captain that says to them, he's like, you guys have led the Bureau in narcotics arrests each of like the last 3 or 4 years, but so many of them are like these low level arrests. So they wanted the big score for the sake of stroking their own egos, much more so than for like protecting the community from the danger of the drugs.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting you bring that up too, and especially community. It's like, one thing I wanted to say is, yeah, like sometimes cops are just there to protect property or or they're just there to protect systems that are in place. And so they're not actually there sometimes to protect us. It's just like the stuff and the things that are going on around. If they allow that kind of thing to keep happening, regardless of if it's actually affecting the community, you know, it's not, or they're not even caring about that, even if it is. It's more like, you're not going to do that in our house. We need to control this, not because we care about how those drugs might get into, you know, vulnerable communities, how the heroin might get into places that might hurt people. They're not concerned about that. They're concerned about the movement of it, how it's moved, who it's moved by, you know? So it's like, it's not this altruistic thing. One thing I will say that I do like about Popeye, and there's not a lot of redeeming qualities, is that he's a cop who lives in his community that he serves. So he's actually, when he's getting shot at by that sniper, he's with his groceries walking home, and he's around just people, working class people, you know, that he lives in this working class apartment. It's nothing big, it's nothing flashy. And it is probably because he's like an obsessive who's just like he's not home. He's like there to like sleep with ladies in tall red boots, and like that he picks up on the street, and then he's out at the bar, sleeping at the bar sometimes, you know? So it's not about that, but I do like that he's actually lives in the community. If there's anything, that he actually lives there. There's so many things I think about being in Toronto, and so many cops don't actually live in Toronto proper, you know. They live in like big ass suburbs and then they come into Toronto proper, and they act poorly, you know.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably one of like the bigger problems permeating police culture in general is people that are not from their communities, like policing other communities. But that's a whole separate podcast that I don't know that we have.
Yeah, we're not going
to go.
Yeah, we're not going there. But I mean, it is like one thing that I think about every time I see that scene where he's shot at, where he's trying to protect those people, because he does like fall into kind of it's like a muscle memory. Like he knows what to do in that moment to make everybody disperse, go away, protect themselves, go home. And I always think about that. Well, okay. I go, well, I guess at least he's from there.
Yeah. That's fair. I'm going to pull at this thread a little bit more because there was a couple of things that I feel like are worth talking about. One of them is that Roy Scheider mentions going to a screening for the movie that was with like a mixed audience. And he said when Popeye uses the N-word in the context of that conversation, he was like, yeah, there's like hoots and hollers from the audience, because there was this acknowledgement of that, like cops actually are that person, but it never gets portrayed on film. So like seeing it actually reflected for a change as like, hey, this cop is openly racist was sort of like refreshing, I guess. But
yeah,
in that same conversation, he also says that the movie was like a big hit with cops. So I'm just like, is this movie like a propaganda movie? Because it doesn't really feel like it. But I guess if you are a police officer and you watch this, you're like, yeah, the cops win in the end. And maybe even though they're like shitty guys, they still get the job done and are good cops.
Well, they're effective. I would rather say that than use the word good.
Successful.
Because the connotation of good means that there's somehow they're doing good. No, I understand what you're saying. I know what you're saying though. And it is refreshing in the sense that you're seeing it, because you feel like so often that you're being gaslit, that that it's like, no, cops are like this, come on, blah blah blah, right? And then so to see Popeye, who the two things can be true. He can be a very effective cop, he can be intelligent, and he can be like vigilant and be an awful person at the same time. The two things can be true at once, so it's into like, yeah, and then to see it, it's like, yeah, that's how they actually are. It is refreshing, because you're like, I'm not being gaslit. This is real. But I feel like there's very few instances in media that aren't propaganda. I watch a lot of cop things, a lot of cop television, my whole life, cop television, cop movies. And it's very rare that you see cops portrayed in like as complete villains. There's usually always something that makes them, that they're trying to make them like sympathetic on some level. Most things in media about cops are propaganda, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it's sort of like the nature of when you want to tell a story about police officers. A lot of the time, maybe the tendency is like, oh, it's very easy to sort of step back and be like black and white. The cops are the good guys, the other guys are the bad guys. It's very much sort of like an oversimplification. And so with a movie like this, where you have some people in the department who are seemingly maybe not necessarily good, but better intentioned than our main characters, you have our two main characters who are obviously working to take down somebody that we see is probably worse, like an assassin and a drug kingpin from another country. I think those are valuable things to sort of frame against each other, because in a vacuum, I think it's easy to be like, well, yeah, the cops are still sort of like the lesser of two evils, or the good guys in this equation. But I never felt really the pull to be like, oh man, I really want them to like catch this guy. It never comes across like that, where the stakes of the film are hung on the shoulders of whether or not like the cops succeed with doing the thing that they want. I think because their motivations for it were not this like altruistic thing about community or anything like that. It's like, let's just get the big score to keep our reputations above water.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like I don't even really, when I watch this movie, and I love this movie, but I never even feel like the bad guys or like I know that they're bad guys, but I don't think of them as a lesser evil. Like I don't even think about them as a lesser evil at all. I don't even feel that, because it's like, to me it's like, I don't know, whoever comes out on top comes out. But because we're watching it mainly from the perspective of Popeye and Cloudy, it makes it so that it's not like you're cheering them on, but there are so many good payoffs in the movie. Like there's payoff after payoff after payoff after seeing their effort. And just by nature of that, as humans, we see them working in a certain way, and then we're like, oh, well, we kind of want to see them get to that. We want to see how that is worked out. Right. That's why we watch like reality shows and stuff like that, and Amazing Race and shit. We don't like, it's like,
That's a good point.
we don't even have to care about the people. We just want to know, okay, they're on this mission and we want to see if they complete this mission. So when we're watching things like Popeye chase that guy down in the subway, the Frog One, when he's after Frog One and he like and he is eating a candy apple. That's a choice. On the subway, on the subway in New York. Anyway, for a grown man is a crazy choice. So, but when we're watching that and he's like thwarted by him, there is fun in watching him get close to getting him. But it's also just as fun when Frog One waves at him through the window of the subway, because then what's cool about that is the payoff of that is when he sees him at the end and he does the same little wave that he does, the finger wave that he does to him on the subway, and we're paid off again. Or when we're looking at the car, when they're ripping the car apart. First of all, it's hilarious when Gene Hackman's like, when he says, I checked every part of this car except for whatever the one part of the car, and Gene's like, what the hell is that? What the hell is that, Herb? Like he's like, it's so funny because it's like you did everything except for one thing. And I love that too, because it's Roy's character who's like is 120 pounds overweight, and he figures it out by just like combing over the numbers. Anyone who is a fan of The Wire, by the way, if you're listening to this and you have not seen French Connection, you need to see French Connection. And anybody who's a fan of French Connection who hasn't seen The Wire, you need to watch The Wire, because it's just like, you'll get that rush. You get that rush from the payoff, regardless of who it is. That's why sometimes we watch movies with bad guys and we want them to win too, right? It's not even about, it's not even really truly about who they are. It's about whatever is going on and what kind of payoff we're going to get from it. So when we find out the heroin is in the car, and then when we figure out that they're like, how clever they are to put the car back together, and everything in its place. That's even like, it just is another layer, And then with the car chase, one of the greatest car chases in cinema history, when we see Popeye see the guy after the big chase, and it's like Gene's face looks like if he's a child and a bag of candy was just dropped in front of him. He's like, could this be? Could this man have just fallen to my lap after everything I've just gone through? Could I have caught him? Like, his face, it just like is the most ethereal and light that you ever see of Popeye through this entire film.
Yeah, well, that like whole chase is so interesting because he goes to the roof after being shot at, then sees the guy running away on the street, somehow gets close enough in foot pursuit. Like he hustled his ass down the stairs really quickly to be able to chase him on foot to the subway and then commandeer the car. And I think just the car chase alone probably gets Roisman nominated for best cinematography because so like they undercranked the camera to make it all seem like much faster than it was going on. And I think in the interview when they're talking about the traffic jam that's there, he's like, no, that was just like a real traffic jam that we had to work around because he gets into this stuff that like Friedkin had them what do you call it? Stealing scenes. So a lot of what I would guess is probably unpermitted filming in certain locations. Like he said, when they did it on Madison Avenue and they were doing the stakeout part of the film as well, you know, Roy's there and a guy he knew from school comes up to him and be like, Roy, how you doing? He's like, get the hell out of here. I'm making a movie. The insistence on filming the movie that way gives it the kind of quality that it has. It feels very observational, where maybe a lesser hand or a differently intended filmmaker would definitely much more actively shape it through the point of view of the police rather than sort of having it be this reactionary sort of like documentary style film.
That's interesting you say that because William Friedkin was a documentarian before.
He was.
And he worked in live television, and he said he would have continued working in live television the rest of his life if the industry just hadn't changed. He would have just kept making it. He actually, one of his documents that he did was about a man in prison, a black man on death row who was about to get the electric chair in about like 6 months. And he called the warden and he made a film about him, and he ended up, that led to this man being pardoned. And he said that's probably one of his greatest achievements. So the documentary style that you're seeing, you know, that's real. That comes from a person that has that knack for it, that made like 1,000 some odd like live kind of documentarian style, you know, things. He when you're looking at them like running around, or when they're standing outside at the coffee, when they're drinking coffee and Roy comes up and he asks Gina, says red or white. He's just giving him a coffee. It says red or white because they're over there having this feast at this fancy restaurant. And Gene says, what year? It's so you know that they're cold for real. You know they're like, it's, you know, everything looks awful and cold and frigid. And that's the way New York looks like. It looks like that in the cold. It still has that feeling in the cold. Well, I haven't been there in a while, but when I've been there, it does have that feel. And it's one of the most, listen, I'm in Canada, but it has like, there's something about being in New York that's one of the, maybe I was there one of the coldest times, but it has a frigidness. Like when you're looking at the sidewalks or walking down the sidewalks, the sidewalks look so cold. I don't know. Nick's looking at me right now and I'm just holding my face. Maybe because I remember so clearly just like being so cold there the last time. And it's crazy to say as somebody who's from up here, but, and because I've lived through frost quakes. Have you ever heard of frost quake? Anyway,
no.
Look that up.
Sounds like a disaster movie.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, and Roy, I feel like he embodies, like he's made for William Friedkin movies.
Yeah.
Like he should have done, I wish they had done more together because he's kind of like has that raw energy that is great for a filmmaker the kind of filmmaker we're talking about with William Friedkin, who's raw, who comes from a documentarian background, who just kind of gets to work and, you know, gets the job done. That's like Roy, that's like the embodiment of who he is, just coming in there and doing the job,
Yeah, kindred spirits. Well, Friedkin said in the commentary for this film that it was Costa Garva's Z that was probably like the most influential in style. What he actually said was, after I saw Z, I realized how I could shoot The French Connection because he shot Z like a documentary. It was a fiction film, but it was made like it was actually happening. Like the camera didn't know what was going to happen next. And that is an induced technique. It looks like he happened upon the scene and captured what was going on as you do in a documentary. My films were documentaries too, so I understood what he was doing, but I never thought you could do that in a feature at that time until I saw Z. So, not only coming from a documentary background, but to then see someone else's work and sort of like reverse engineer the techniques that are needed in order to apply that, and then do it here with this movie. I mean, along with just like you said, the way that it looks, it makes it feel very New York when you watch it.
Yeah, it's not just because they're there, but it's because it is really like, first of all, when we talked about the clothes, the people, everyone looks like they're real people that he's capturing, and because they probably are, because he can do that because he has that sensibility as a documentarian, and to kind of capture what is the most real. That's what you're trying to do, is like distill, down to like the most authentic, so I think that's why he's able to capture it, and that's why it feels, you can really feel it. There's certain movies that we know are shot in places, but there are certain ones where you can feel that feel it while you're watching it, that they're actually there. And some are more effective than others, and this is one of those.
Yeah.
I do have a quote from Roy, but we can do it later.
No, you can do it now.
I feel like it matters this. He said, the important thing is to do good work, no matter what the medium you do it, in. So I think that's what, like they're coming from the similar place, the Friedkin and Scheider, because they're, it doesn't matter the medium. They're just going to do good work. That's like their MO,
Yeah. And, in talking about sort of like the realism of the film before, I just didn't want to like lose this identity from the car chase, because it is such a big piece of the overall like takeaway from the film. You said it's one of the best like car chases probably in cinema. A lot of that was done with accidents that were not supposed to happen. It was supposed to be like close calls, but then real accidents happen because the timing was off. But in terms of New York, the train that runs over the street in Brooklyn is such a very specific visual identity, and it just like it casts this permanent shade under the bridge, so it's like you're in darkness even during daytime, and it makes it like a lot more of a sort of precarious situation, because especially like as we're seeing it as the audience, it's probably darker than it is for like the human eye. But I'm like, oh, this guy doesn't have his headlights on or anything, and he's weaving in and out of traffic. Like, this is so insanely dangerous, but it really puts you in a place that like kind of you can't be anywhere else to mimic that. And that look, I think, plays in a lot to that car chase and why it is so cool.
Yeah, those elevated tracks are, it just stylistically too, it's, the idea is very cool, because it even visually, like when I'm actually looking at your background, which is a French Connection, and you're seeing like French crossing over Connection, like all those like those like near misses, those kind of crossing over things that people supposed to meet people here, somebody's chasing somebody and they miss them just by a smidge or that sort of thing. That all, with the bridge and the train and the car underneath, everything is kind of like these like little X's, that are stacked on top of each other. Like, and so like visually, storytelling wise, all of it just kind of comes together to make something, one, look very authentic, but also it keeps the momentum of the film going at all times. Because even when something that they do that I love in this film is when they're taken off the case, because they are, which happens in a lot of cop things. You're off the case, right?
You screwed it up. You wasted too many resources. You're being reassigned.
You had one job and you blew it. Sorry. Get a little De Niro in there. But yeah, like the off the case thing. But this is so casual. Like, that's it. You're not doing this anymore. And then he's walking with his groceries, and then he's shot at, and then everything just starts again.
Yeah.
It's not this big ceremonial thing.
Yeah, that's true.
He doesn't go home. He doesn't get home and sit there sulking for like a song, you know what I mean? Or a montage or whatever. And somebody doesn't have to visit him and tell him to keep his motivation up, or don't worry, you'll get back at it, or something else. He doesn't have to stumble upon something that makes him start having to have his drive again. He's just thrown back into it. And then so are we. And that's it. And then we don't talk about it any further. They don't have to be like reinstated, and there's not like a whole thing.
Yeah, that kind of happens a lot of the time. Like in I think it's Die Hard, maybe. It's like that sort of scenario where it's like, you're a good cop, but you're too reckless, so we're taking your badge. But then, oh crap, there's a big threat, and you're the only one that can do it, so we're calling you back. Yeah. Like realistically, if the assassination attempt on him doesn't happen, they're off the case. The drugs move as they're supposed to. Probably the guys never get caught. Yeah,
and I'm sure they're thinking about it. They'd be thinking about it. They'd be frustrated, but they probably wouldn't do anything. He'd probably just be like, "Fuck," you know what I mean? I'm gonna go, go home and drink some beer and probably jerk off. I don't know, but like
handcuff himself to the bed this time.
It's so crass of me, but it's true. Like, okay, so but and maybe Russo might show up to make sure he's not, drowning in his own puke or something like that. But I'm sure they would just kind of continue. So then they set up the catalyst that throws them back into everything, but it's not this like ceremony. And I love that. And I'm not knocking the other style of things too. That's fun too. But I do appreciate it in this film how it's done.
Yeah, well, all right. There's a quote that I pulled up that I want to hear Roy say himself. He's talking about not just the relationship between him and Hackman, but between Popeye and Cloudy, and how the two of them worked with Friedkin on one particular element.
He's so charming.
That was the first scene in the movie involving dialogue with Hackman and myself. Up to that, it had been physical action on the street. One guy playing Santa Claus and the other one selling hot dogs.
Yeah.
So in this scene, we had to establish with the audience that we were two cops who were ruthless, knew what they were doing, had a tremendous rapport, could do that good guy, bad guy routine to terrorize Alan Weeks in that scene. So we thought in the beginning of the movie we would try to do the first scene of the movie first. Well, we tried that scene in a car, we tried that scene in a room, it didn't work. It didn't have any flow, it didn't have any rhythm. I didn't believe myself, Gene didn't believe himself. We spent 2 days trying to get that scene and said, you know what? Well, Billy said it, Friedkin said, he said, you guys ain't cops yet. You're close, but you're not there yet. So then we went to something a little easier, right?
Yeah.
Shot the whole movie, came back one afternoon, shot that in about 2 hours.
Is that right?
Just piece of cake.
Really?
Because by then we were cops. By then we really knew each other the way Grasso and Egan knew each other from working years and years and years and years together. But you can't get it in 4 weeks preparation. You just cannot be that with that ease. You can't.
That's the one that I wanted.
I love that. I love the way he does that snap, and he says, "Piece of cake."
Piece of cake. He's chill.
Yeah. I love that they did that scene at the end after everything. That's awesome. Built up their relationship, and then piece of cake.
Yeah, and I mean, credit to Friedkin as well for like understanding. Like, look, I know you guys want to be in this place right now, but like clearly you're not. And then you go back and, if you watch that scene after listening to that soundbite, like he's got a tire iron or something in his hand. He's like slamming it against the wall. When he talks about turning around and kind of laughing, he is both himself and the character in that moment, which I find like poetic in a way, in that he knows that Gene Hackman's going to be scaring the actor that they're working with, but he also knows that the whole line about like the picking your feet in Poughkeepsie is just this. Yeah, it's like this just like throwaway dialogue that is used as a technique to like get people like a little unnerved. And when I listen to him talk about this movie more, he talks about how insistent Friedkin was on letting them improv a lot. And there's entire scenes where I think it was like they're in the car with the Fed, and it was like maybe post stakeout, and I think they give him like a coffee or something when Gene Hackman first gets in the back, and he's like, yeah, all that stuff is pretty much improv, because when they read the first script for the film, it was so procedural that it didn't have like the color and the bite that they wanted it to. So they paired them up with the actual real cops, and then they went on these raids, just like Roy said. And he's like, yeah, of course we're not the first people through the door, but we were hanging out with them and going on these raids. And then the next morning after these outings, they'd go into the production office and they would all get together and sort of build the scenes out with the texture of those experiences. So I think a lot of credit to Roy himself as a performer, and Gene and Friedkin, for sort of knowing what it was going to take to get this movie where it needed to go, and letting it be sort of organically orchestrated by these experiences.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess because Roy spent a little longer with this material too. Well, he was told that when Friedkin offered him the role, he's just like, you want me to read? Like, and he's just like, read what? There is no dialogue. It's just a bunch of guys running around going like that. And he's like, you want to do that for me? And he'd already done that scene with Jimmy Breslin and Alan Weeks, who's in it, but he'd done that, worked on that scene already. So, but also not to give up on it. Like, even though you've worked on it with somebody else successfully, and then worked on it again with that person not successfully, and then had the guy, and then worked on it over and over for 2 days, and then still not got it. So he had spent a long time with that scene.
Yeah, it's kind of, when you think about what he said, they spent like 2 days trying to get it with just him and Gene. So like, imagine how many total hours of filming were dedicated to like try to get the scene, because it is fairly early in the movie too, and you really need to establish like who these guys are. So his awareness, or at least Friedkin's awareness, that like, you're not going to be able to cultivate the sort of attitude that you want because you guys haven't been in this long enough together as cops. And so then by the time you get done filming the movie and you've gone through like basically this entire police investigation with these characters, and you go back to the beginning and it's like, yeah, this is this time for them, but they've definitely done this before. So then when we meet them in the beginning later on and the scene is polished, it's like, oh, okay, we get much better, clearly defined character roles from them.
Yeah, and you also learn some stuff. You learn a lot about Buddy in that, because about Roy's character, because they are playing good cop, bad cop.
Yes.
And he's supposed to be the good cop, but he brutalizes that man, because when he chases him down, because he's been cut by him too. When he chases him down, he's the first one to get to him. Because when they're both running, at one point it does look, there's only one point where Roy looks like he's like holding off a little bit, like he's letting Jean run him a little faster. There's one point, there's one shot that looks like he's kind of like pulled back a little bit, but then he ends up being in front of him and he is kicking him. The guy's on the ground and he's kicking him a bunch before Jean even gets there. But then when Jean gets there and starts trying to hurt him, he's like, enough, that's enough, and he pulls him off of him. And then when they take him into the alley, he like is kicking him again. But then when Jean goes to do something, he's like, no, it's too much, no. And so he's definitely playing a role the entire time. And he's the role of the good cop, but still beating the guy. So you learn that they're very much like, yes, Buddy's probably a better person day to day that other people could socialize with, but he's not like squeaky clean either.
Yeah, in this universe, even the good cop beats you. He just beats you less than the guy in the Santa suit, which leads me into like a secondary tangent question. Do we get to count this as a Christmas movie?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes. This is a Christmas movie.
Good. That's what I wanted to hear, because we need more movies that are like set at Christmas, but that are not focused on being like about Christmas.
Yeah, those are some of my favorites. Those are some of my favorite kinds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
there's a lot of crime ones.
We'll add this one to the list. So it's a good one. It's a good one to have too.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you about those. Anyway, but yeah, it's definitely a Christmas movie. It's frigid and cold too, which is
for me. It's like if I see snow or if it looks cold, I'm gonna be like, okay, it might be a Christmas movie. It kind of counts.
That's the thing about this movie. It looks colder than movies with snow in it. Yeah. Because it just looks cold and frigid and sad.
I'm curious what the shoot schedule was, because there's definitely some times where it's like the idea was that it's cold outside, but then there's times later in the movie where the guy's walking and I can just like see the breath pluming out of him as he walks, and I'm like, okay, well there it's actually really cold. This other time, like I see him shivering and stuff, but like I don't see all of the other hallmarks I would. So it's like I trust him that it's cold, but this other scene, it's like that's definitely freezing outside.
Yeah. And there was one other thing I wanted to say about Russo, but I can't remember. That's fine.
Well, let me ask you about the score from Don Ellis here, because I really liked it quite a bit. Like you have these low, like baritone horns, it's like brum, brum,
yeah,
and it's like it reminded me of some Godzilla stuff that I heard from like the 60s, 70s, late Showa era. And not all of it was like that, but the combination of like some like plucky, really sort of like high pitched strings with these like low horn sounds, then you actually have like much fuller complementary horn sounds as well. And I was just like, it was weird that, of all the things that this movie did well, I feel like the score was one of them, but it was not represented in the same way, I guess, critically, that a lot of the other elements of the film were. And then Don Ellis doesn't really score that many pictures. He does the 7-Ups and French Connection too. So it's like 3, I think, of his like 7 features are films within the same cinematic
like
world.
universe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love the score. The score has like a lot of the attitude.
Yeah, very much so.
Of the characters,
Yeah, it's
like,
not super clean. It's not like an adventure movie score. It's not like a jazzy noir police score either. It's like
no.
It's abrupt. A lot of the instruments feel like they're not tuned correctly, kind of thing. And I really felt like, hey, it punches up like in the right areas. Like anytime that I wanted to feel tension, like that low, like guttural horn sound, I'm like, something bad is gonna happen here, because I'm anticipating it just based on the music. It almost feels like sort of tonal elements that would be used in something like the beginnings of the Jaws score, so like this very like low intense sound that lets you know like something is coming.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, exactly. And then there's these like breaks of like seeming like quietness, but there's something there, and then like all of a sudden, and it has that energy. Like sometimes it's like Popeye, his energy shifts and the music shifts with that energy. And it seems like it's not consistent, but it's actually very consistent.
Yeah,
it has the illusion of not being consistent.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think like it's one of the things that I think defies convention that makes this movie stand out. And I feel like, I mean, the ending carries that through line as well, in that, we get this showdown that's happening in an abandoned warehouse. And like, look, good rule of thumb for me is like, if your movie ends up in an abandoned like warehouse, then like we're gonna have some fun. And we do. And like, so this obsession with Popeye chasing Frog 1 and his insistence that he's chased him and cornered him into this area, and his willingness to not hesitate in that situation ends up, he kills the Fed, who, I mean, he had issues with, but he does it so cold and with so little remorse. I'm just like, well, if the rest of the movie hadn't already convinced you that this guy is not a good character, we make sure to drive that home for you at the end, as he stands over his dead body, reloading his gun, just like, all right, I swear the dude I'm looking for is here. I'm going to go get him. And that final shot as he's walking through like the wet and the dark interior, and it's just like he's going off into the darkness, and you hear a shot fired, and then the movie ends. And we get like the weird outro titles of, oh, these two were removed from the case. So it's like, all right, well, he lived, the other guy got away. What happened with the shot being fired? Did he miss? Like, it leaves it in such a strange place for a police movie, right? Because they succeeded in the one part of like stopping the drug transaction, but what he wanted was to like get that guy.
Yeah. He was obsessed. He was he had one, he wasn't going to give up. He had one goal, and he was holding that over since he was thwarted by Frog 1. He was holding on to that.
Yeah. He's like, I've been waiting for this since he waved at me on the train.
And then you get to see, okay, well, like Russo, but Cloudy is different, but he's different. Because first of all, he almost gets his head blown off going into that warehouse by Gene. He almost dies. But then he's just like, you killed him. Like, he wants some sort of acknowledgement, like you killed him, but he's not getting that. And Buddy just killed somebody outside. And so, but there's a difference. That was defense. They were being shot at, and he shot him. while they were being shot at. And it was clear as day. Like, he's just, that man was shooting at everybody and he shot him, and he's the one who took him down. But he knows the difference between what Gene is doing in that warehouse and what he just did. So even though he's just killed somebody, he's like, this isn't the same.
Yeah, and even like, I think what makes it such a sort of like forceful full circle moment is that the guy that dies is the guy who has the biggest beef with Popeye, because he's the one who throughout the course of the movie has said, like, well, your instincts resulted in a dead cop. And so now I have to ask myself at this point in the movie, like, did he kill that other cop on accident too? Because, these guys are partners. I know that Cloudy is like not super happy about this, but my guess is that he's going to help cover it up.
Well, we know that Buddy does defend him when he's talking about that in the office. He defends Popeye.
Yeah.
He says, if you're going to if you're going to come with that, like, basically that energy, then you might as well go home. Right. Yeah. He's like, he doesn't want to hear any of it. Like, that's when they're in the office. Popeye's not there.
Yeah, it was when they're first, like, the feds are first getting assigned to assisting them.
Yeah, and he's trashing Popeye, and then Buddy defends him, and then their guy's like, he's a good cop, he's a blah blah. It's a good outfit, actually. He's wearing a good outfit.
He always is.
Yeah. So, but you see the difference between them as human beings in that moment too. Like, I think that you really need to see each time that Buddy's complacent. He is complacent, but you can still see the difference between them and how they think about other human beings. At the end of the day, I guess.
Yeah. And it's not lost on me that, like, the person that dies in the errant crossfire happens to be that person that was critical of Popeye for costing another cop their life.
Well, I think that's why Roy, like, Cloudy is like, keeps pointing it out. You killed this man, like, this guy. Because I think he's aware of that too. This is the guy that was on your case. You know what I mean?
It's like he doesn't even look down at him, really. He's just like, he empties the gun. He starts refilling. He's like, I'm going to go get the frog guy. I know he's in there.
Yeah, he doesn't. He shows no remorse. He shows no concern. If that were Russo, like, he would have looked devastated. He would have looked panicked, I think.
Fair. He sees the guy. He's like, well, I hated that guy anyway, so no problem.
I don't even know that he's thinking that. I think he's so manic.
He's so linear. He's just like,
he's just
looking for the frog.
Yeah, he doesn't. I don't even think he thinks I didn't even like it. I don't think he cares if he liked. I don't even think he thinks about that man. It's just because the reason I say that is because even when they were driving, when they're chasing, they're tailing that one car. When they first go out with the feds and they're on the highway and they're tailing that guy, and the Fed is like, you're getting too far behind. And then Popeye gets out of the car, and he's just like not even paying attention to him. He just starts running off. And it takes Roy to say, get back in the car. Like, what the hell are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, you can't just like run him down on the highway, It takes him to bring him back. He's always the one who's bringing him back, and he pays the price for being that, he stands that close to somebody, you're going to get painted with the same brush, gets him removed from narcotics.
Yeah. And I mean, the fact that the movie was based on a true story. Well, based on a book that was based on the exploits of these two cops. So I think it's still close enough to have those like closing titles of, hey, the bad guy got away, the cops got taken off the case. This isn't a movie that ends with the sort of pretty bow on it. It's not a movie that gets just handed to you on a silver platter, like good guys win, bad guys lose, happy ending, go home.
Yeah, they don't even just get taken off the case. Before they were taken off the case, at the end they're taking out of their department.
Yeah.
They're taking off out of narcotics completely.
And probably rightfully so, to be honest. A lot of people died.
I'm nodding.
The bad guy got away.
For some reason, I forgot that I was on a podcast for some reason, and I've been nodding to you a lot in this last few minutes. So if people are wondering if I care what Nick is saying, I've been nodding yes.
I can confirm.
But I haven't been saying words, which is not helpful to this format.
The audio medium takes some practice. I mean, we see each other, so it's much easier. But was there anything else like specifically that you wanted to chat about in regards to this film?
Oh, there's so many things. But I don't know if I need to say them all. I just like the way. I love how much Roy gets to do in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, selfishly, that's probably my favorite thing too. Is like, oh, he's all over this. This isn't like a small supporting role. He's like the main character.
Yeah, because like right from the beginning, that chase with the Santa suit chase, or as I'd like to call that scene, picking your feet in Poughkeepsie. Like he's all over that. And then afterwards, when they're leaving, and he thinks that he's just gonna go, he just wants to go home. And then Popeye takes him out, and he thinks, "Oh, you're out here," and he's just like, "Oh, I thought we were here, to get me a drink." And then he realizes he's working, ends up on a stakeout all night, And then I love, well, the scene is awful when they go into that bar. And he's like, "Popeye's here," which is funny, but awful. I love how Roy at the end is like, tell everybody we'll be back in an hour. Like he always, there's like, Gene has something to say, but he always has his part. The most extended period of time that we don't see Roy is the car chase, the foot chase into the car chase, which makes sense because you can't break that up. But that as soon as that's done, it goes back to him, basically. So, I mean, he's even the one who's like, when they're at their warehouse, it's like, "You're surrounded. This is the police. You're surrounded." Or the megaphone. Like he's all over this picture. This movie's nothing without him,
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily like, I hesitate to use the phrase like career making, but I mean it certainly helped because it showed that he can take on a lot. He can work in an environment that is not super structured. He can work with a director who likes improv, and he was capable of being the kind of person to contribute to a lot of those conversations on like what was happening in the movie and why it was happening. So it was like, for me, we see him talk about acting sometimes and coming from his stage background and how different that is with the physicality and sort of like character development. So to go into a situation like this where you're kind of cast blindly and then you show up at the director's office and like you go through several other actors before you find your actor to play opposite you, and throughout all of that still like, just like you said, showing up, doing the work, being a consummate professional. I think that's one of the things that I think is so compelling about him, because when he's not working, he seems just like very laid back, very humble, very appreciative of like the position that he found himself in. But when he shows up, like he does it from every angle.
Yeah. He never phones it in. That doesn't apply to what we've seen from his career.
Never phones it in.
And yeah, and one of my favorite scenes too is like I feel like it really represents him. Like that, I love that when they're breaking down that car scene and he's just chilling, smoking a cigarette. Oh, by the way, if you smoke and you've quit and you're trying not to, Roy looks really cool smoking in this movie. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to you smokers. You're going to be like, oh, I want one of those because he makes it look so cool. I don't smoke, so I'm thinking.
Well, there's that scene where they're ripping the car apart and they rip the dashboard out and the ashtray flips open and like all the soot from the extinguished cigarettes goes in their face and you hear like, I'm just like, oh yeah, that's probably real.
Yeah. And but he has a couple scenes when they're looking up into the car. He has a cigarette hanging from his mouth when he's looking at his papers. He's like smoking. Like Gene doesn't really smoke in this. He's always smoking though. And yeah, I don't know. And then we didn't really cover his clothes, but we did cover fashion. We're good. We're good. Check out the fashion. It's awesome. Cool biker jacket, turtlenecks, tweed jackets. You know. Oh, a beautiful parka that he wears, where when they put the car back together and he goes to give them back their car and he's so like jovial about it. He's just like, hey, oh, we got so many cars there. Oh, you put it down there. Oh yeah, it's gonna get towed. Oh, where are you in from? That's crazy. You know, like he's just so peppy and sweet. Can't wait to give them back their car. Oh, he plays that so well.
He does. Like it's almost like you see some of the traits of the people pleasing side of Chief Brody like hinted at in that moment, where it's like he can be very personable, but he also comes across as not naive, but sort of like intentionally holding back a little bit. Because I think we get that a lot in Brody, in that like he's obviously coming from the big city, moving to a small town, but then when he's out here dealing with these folks, like he sort of just operates at a different frequency, but you can tell that there's more there.
I agree. And even when he's playing even when he's in Klute, the character has like I mean, it's nefarious, but he has this like way of kind of drawing you in and being like, oh, everything's fine when you know it's not fine. But
he's relaxed. Look at him.
Yeah, he's trying to like lull you into a sense of security, which is not there. One of the things I did, and I did it last time, but it doesn't really apply in the same way. But it will apply in other movies, is I did like time codes of when he's on screen, like what minute he comes on screen. He comes about into the movie about 4 minutes in, and then I like tracked all the other times that he shows up, but he's in this whole movie so much it doesn't really matter. You don't go very long without seeing him, so I don't think people need these times, you know.
Yeah, it's gonna be he's like gonna be more present than in something where it's like, oh, if you just want to watch his scene, cut to this moment.
Yeah, like I guess there are scenes, but there are scenes that are extended that Gene's not in either in this film, you know, where we're with the French. And it's extended. We're with the other side and it is extended. But most of the time that Popeye's on screen, so is Cloudy. So if anybody listens to this and they really want these times, yes, I can provide those, but I really don't think you need them because there are times where I put it down and it's like 2 minutes per. So it's like, you know, I'm like, no, but for maybe his more supporting roles again, I will track those. This was not necessary that I did them. But in Klute, the ones that I gave do matter because he's if you want to just go to his scenes, then they're provided in the I gave them last time, I think, right?
You did.
So in the future, I'll do that again for when he's in him.
Yeah, well,
more supporting role.
Speaking of the future, we're kind of going to be going out of order. I know we had come up with like, hey, this is going to be the chronological sequencing of things, and we stayed on track for the first two. But we have to make an exception because this was the 50th anniversary year of Jaws, and Jaws is being re-released in theaters next weekend. So because of our love of Jaws and the fact that I run the show and, you know, we we can do kind of whatever we want, we're just going to bump Jaws up in the rotation to celebrate, and then we'll get back on track with the rest of the movies on the list.
Yeah, I have to say, it's re-releasing on my birthday, August 29th.
Just for you.
And guess whose birthday is also, R.I.P., William Friedkin's.
Is it the 29th? Wow.
Yeah, we share a birthday.
Well, that's a good one. That's a good one to share.
Yeah. So, so yeah, it's also, yeah, so the re-release of Jaws and our birthdays.
Nice. Well, we'll reconvene for like early next week to plan Jaws. I mean, this is kind of like Jaws is the movie that sort of would be the backbone of all of this, you know?
Yes.
So, we'll have a good time with that.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
All right, are you ready to close it out with today's Royism?
Yeah, man, that was delightful. What a picture! What a picture!
Yeah.
French Connection is
absolutely fantastic.
Oh, when Friedkin was out, I relate a lot to Friedkin, oddly, as he shares his birthday. But when he was asked about it, he's just like, "Yeah, I think it's pretty good." And I was like, I relate to that kind of answer. I relate to answering in those ways. I do. I very much am that way. And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty fucking good, you know.
Right. I think it's pretty good. So hopefully people like it. Yeah, like I said, it's probably the most well-rated movie I've ever spoken about, like publicly in a recorded setting. So we set the bar high.
And it deserves every percentage.
Yeah, 5 out of 8 Oscars. That's pretty solid numbers right there. That's over 50%. And you know, it got Roy a nod for supporting, so we'll take that too.
Oh yeah, and I'm not a revisionist. I like to leave that up to our friends at Revisionist Almanac.
Yeah, that's what they do. Not here.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I appreciate them for that, but. If I were to be a revisionist, it might be for that Oscar, Roy's Oscar for nomination for French Connection. I think he deserved that, actually.
Interesting.
I went and I looked at who was nominated, and I still think he deserves.
Well, I'll have to check out Rev Almanac and see if they have a 1971 year. I don't know. I'm going to be joining Andrew and Felicia in.
Oh, nice.
2027 to look back at 1965. So I'll have my homework cut out for me over the next year and several months.
Mm-hmm. Oh, cool. I want to do that. But yeah, so if he does, well, this is our little nod to our friends at Revisionist Almanac. I don't know if you agree, but I think he deserved that Oscar. If I were to change anything.
I mean, I'm going to say yes because I love Roy Scheider, but I would really have to go back and look and, like, if I was going to be honest, be like, well, what else was out there? And maybe just give Roy the lead actor nod, and then maybe he wins that. Maybe it was an easier category for Hackman. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, there are a couple times where, you know, I think that would have worked for him. Anyway, yeah, I'm ready to close out.
All right, let's go to today's Royism.
I think we live in a fantasy life when we're kids. I mean, it doesn't all hang together, what adults do and how they get through life and why they are the kind of people they are. So I think we fantasize into thinking what we'd like to be.
And when you're a sick kid in bed and you're spending a lot of time reading and fantasizing, you play a lot of roles. You know, you play a lot of things. So the acting thing sort of fell in place for me because it was an opportunity for me to be everything but the sick kid. I could be anything I wanted to be if I were an actor. I could be a diplomat, I could be a fighter, I could be a gangster, I could be all kinds of heroes. So I think that's where it began for me.
Every time we do a racism, I want to cry.
Well, I'm choosing good ones for a reason.
Well, yeah, but I mean, just there's something about him. Obviously, that's why we're doing this. And he just makes me feel so much. Like I'm emotional.
I feel like
you know what it is? He's earnest. I believe him when 100%. He says these things.
I was just going to say that there is, I think, especially then versus now, there was maybe less of a contentious relationship with media wanting to do these types of interviews. There's less gotcha journalism. Like, these people are not going to Roy Scheider looking for a soundbite that they can bury him for, right? They're going to him because they're actually interested, and he's being promoted. I think it was a Dan Rather's show, Who's Who. So this wasn't this thing of like, hey, we're just looking for a TMZ quality type of interview on the street. Like, this is organized. We sit down, we have breakfast. Like, it's very thoughtful. And so his responses to these questions are very thoughtful. They're very measured. And you hear so much of the person that he is come through in that answer, just like the other one that we watched where he's in the back of the taxi, I think, and they're going somewhere. It's like so much of who he is worn on his sleeve. And I think that's the thing that really draws me to him as a performer, even though like I started learning much more about him like later.
Yeah.
Versus when I became a fan of his.
Right. I was a fan of his before I started to think about him as like just the man, you know. I just always loved Martin Brody. But I now realize, looking at the man, why I love Martin Brody so much. It's that he brings what he brings to it as him as a person, you know, that earnestness, that heart on his sleeve quality that I feel like I can really relate to. And there's just something about, you know, he shoots from the hip. He's just like, this is who I am. I'm an actor. These are roles that I play. And then I'm just put that to bed when I'm done, you know?
Yeah, for lack of a better term, it's like he's blue collar, you know?
Yeah.
He's not like a hoity-toity leading man who's getting 20 million a picture type of thing. He's a working man's actor.
Yeah. I love it. I guess that's why we're here.
It is. And that's why we'll be back together again early next week to revisit the one, the only Jaws. Well,
Jaws.
Technically not the one and only, as there were 4 of them in the franchise.
Oh, right. Because we should probably warn everybody.
We're going to talk a little bit about Jaws 2 as well.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to just cover it. I'm sure we'll end up talking about the other movies just by just talking about Jaws in general.
Yeah.
It'll just like kind of come up. But yeah.
We will mostly be on track. How's that?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, This has been fun, and we'll do it again soon.
I can't wait. Thanks, friend.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to this special presentation of the Scheist Podcast. I hope you had a good time with us, and if you enjoyed it, please subscribe to the show and leave a rating and a review. We would really love to hear from you, so you can email the show at nick@thescheist.com, or you can reach out to me or Vanya on social media. If you're in the Toronto area, you can check out Vanya's Paid in Sweat program and more at Review Cinema, and if you're not in Toronto, you can check out her writing at thatshelf.com. And make sure to check out the whole lineup of shows on the Scheist Podcast Network, including Kunked, Hers, His, and Ours, Ex-Friends, and Bad Movies We Love. Links for everything is in the show notes for your convenience. So until next time, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and take care.